Here we are at Muscadine Studios in Macon, Georgia, with the proprietor, producer, musician, Paul Hornsby. Welcome, Paul.
I never thought about being a proprietor. I thought I was just a piano player.
You are.
Piano player, proprietor.
I want to go back to your Hourglass days. And you guys basically moved to Los Angeles, Hollywood.
We were the first Southern rock band. We didn't know it at the time.
Right.
And it wasn't called Southern rock.
No.
Thinking back, the style of music we were playing is what you hear locally in Macon and what was kind of invented here.
Right.
And the music we've been on the West Coast that was being played was the Beach Boys and Jan and Dean. In fact, the producer, Dallas Smith, that we wound up working with out there, he produced Jan and Dean's stuff. So,
okay.
Which, you can imagine that's miles away from
Exactly.
Southern rock. Yeah.
But you were a young man from Alabama.
And Bulletproof.
In Hollywood.
I mean,
So what was your mindset being there in...
It was like, golly, look, there's, and there's, everywhere you look, there's movie stars. And
Exactly.
The first week we were in L.A., I think maybe the second week, we played a big party at the Beverly Hilton Hotel for
Sure.
Danny Thomas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of the St. Jude Hospital.
Yeah.
But, if you're older than dirt like me, you know who Danny Thomas was. And every major movie star that had a TV series in L.A. was in attendance. They were all there. The Mission Impossible people and stuff that I just loved to watch on TV. And Sergeant Frank Sutton, Sergeant
from
Jim Neighbors'
Gomer
Gomer
Pyle.
Pyle, yeah.
Yeah.
He sat right at our feet, and he didn't bat an eye. He loved our band, and so I could just name drop all day. But
Well, speaking of that, and I'll show the picture on the screen, but here's a picture of you and Gregg Allman with part of the cast of Lost in Space.
they patronized our band. They came, a lot of the cast, especially not Lansbury, Cartwright,
Angela
Bill,
Cartwright.
Bill Mooney. They came to a lot of our gigs. They came to the Whiskey Go-Go. And,
Okay.
and we played a private Halloween party for June Lockhart, who was the matron on the show. And she was just like family. She was like my mother.
Really?
And she said, we'll have to get you all out to the set. Would you all like to come out and watch us film sometime? And I mean, you don't have to twist my arm. I said, yeah, absolutely. She said, well, I'll call you. And I thought I'd never hear any more from her. So
Yeah.
one morning about 6 o'clock, phone rang, and I get real cranky when I get woke up, and I yelled into the phone, "This better be blinking good." And there was this little feminine voice that said, "Paul, this is June Lockhart." Oh, hey, June. She says, "Wonder if you guys would like to come out to the set today?" And I said, "We sure would." I said, "Let me get busy and collect everybody." And she told us how to get there and everything. So that was a big honor for us.
Yeah. Well, it looks here in this picture that you and Angela are kind of sharing a moment here.
I wish.
Okay.
But she was only 14.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh my
And I was
gosh.
a little older than that.
Yeah. You've got. Who do you think you look like in this picture?
That was my Sonny Bono look.
Exactly. I was going to say Sonny
He
Bono.
should have been proud, right?
Yeah. Well, Sonny Bono had a lot of success as a producer and stuff. And by the way, I don't know if we mentioned it, the band that Paul played with was the Hourglass with Duane and Gregg Allman and Pete Carr and Johnny Sandler.
Yeah.
The last incarnation of the Hourglass, it's amazing how successful all of you guys were.
All of us were lucky enough to keep a foothold in the business. Johnny Sandlin,
Right.
Pete Carr, myself, Robert Popwell, I was a bass player. He went on to play in the Crusaders.
Exactly. And
You got to picture him somewhere.
no, there's the single you guys did.
Okay,
And
yeah.
I'll put that up on the screen. And here's a review from one, maybe Billboard or some magazine. It says, instrumental with smoldering in the Booker T manner to excite blues and top 40 audiences.
At the time, there was a dance craze called the Chicken. And Booker T and the MGs came out with an instrumental called Southern Fried. And so Phil said, why don't you guys do one? Make it like a chicken. And Pete Carr does this chicken picking kind of lick. And we called it Pulley Bone.
Yeah.
And it was never a hit, but I don't think Booker T's version was a hit either. But there's a station in Miami played the hell out of it.
Oh, cool.
Pulley Bone. I got a copy around here somewhere.
I got a copy in my office.
You must have a copy.
I do. Yeah, I got a copy in my office. Yeah. Back to the Hourglass in Los Angeles. You guys were playing on the same bill with the Doors, Janis Joplin,
I think,
Jefferson Airplane,
yep,
Grateful Dead.
Buffalo Springfield was a band that we loved. We were chummy with those guys, and we played lots of dates with them. And in fact, Steve Stills and Neil Young wrote the liner notes for one of our albums.
But did you realize that you were working and surrounded with all this?
Very aware of it. In fact, we expected to be in their shoes at any moment.
Yeah.
Which never happened because we didn't have a hit record.
Yeah.
They kept trying to make Jan and Dean out of us and tried to make Gary Puckett and the Union Gap out of Gregg. And so it was a different direction than we had in mind. Yeah.
After that kind of fell apart, you came here to Macon, Georgia. And
a roundabout way. As a matter of fact, I moved back, actually, practically the day I got back from L.A. and Hourglass broke up, I moved back to Tuscaloosa. It's funny how certain towns are always known as a musical town. Seattle has its grunge bands, and Memphis had its bands, and Muscle Shoals had its music scene, and Tuscaloosa is like Macon is now, is a guitar player on every corner, and still are. And so I kind of picked up the remnants of a local band that played at a bar there in Tuscaloosa and called the South Count. And then I added a few other players to it, and there was a pretty hot piano player in town at the time, several years younger than me. And I was kind of the old man then. Anyway, he had just come out of the 11th grade and was about to go into the 12th. And it was Chuck Leavell.
Oh, yeah.
And what's funny, he was very promising for as young as he was. He was only like 16. And he was showing signs of being a genius then. And another player we added was Charlie Hayward, who later played bass with Charlie Daniels.
Yeah.
To the end of their thing, actually.
Yeah, you're the one who basically got him in Charlie Daniels' band.
Yeah,
right?
that's another story.
Okay.
So anyway, there was Chuck, and then I forgot where I'm going with this, but I'll just take off and. So we're playing. We got the South Camp playing. We're playing in a club regularly, and we're playing fraternity parties, and that's where the money was in the South back then. And Duane moved on to Muscle Shoals and was doing session work.
Right.
So early in the spring of '69, about 9 months after the Hourglass broke up, he called me. I was in Tuscaloosa, and he said, "Paul, how about coming up? Would you be interested in coming up and playing on some demos with me?" He said, "Atlantic has heard some of my guitar work, and they're interested in maybe signing me as an artist. They want to see what I can do, and they want me to sing." And he said, "I'm nervous about that, but he said, I'll try anything." So anyway, I drove up to Muscle Shoals, and I was there about 2 or 3 days. I was offered three jobs in that 3 days I was there. First, Rick Hall offered me a job playing as a piano player in the Fame studio. Little did I know, and the world knew, the Fame gang was getting ready to leave Rick and have their own studio. They were building it, and it was called Muscle Shoals Sound.
Yeah.
And the guys that played in there were the Swampers.
Yeah.
What they became the Swampers after Leonard Skinner got through telling about it. And so Rick was building a new crew. But I didn't really want to move to Muscle Shoals.
Now why?
It was a dry county for one thing.
Oh, okay.
And the only music being played was in studio.
Yeah.
and which was okay. But hell, I like playing live too.
Yeah.
I still was expecting a call from the Beatles, you know.
Oh yeah.
Oh, anyway, Phil Walden was there. I think he was just making a deal with Rick Hall
To get Duane.
to get Duane.
Yeah.
And Phil says he was trying to really put the Hourglass back together. Essentially, he wanted Johnny Sandlin and myself and Pete Carr to play and with Duane, and they were yet to see what we were going to come up with, see what Duane could do in the studio as an artist. And we weren't, Sandlin and I and Pete, we weren't interested because we had just gone through beating our head against the wall in L.A. and we just got back to the South and just starting to eat regular again, and we had been through some lean, skinny days out there.
Yeah.
And so we passed on that. And he said, remember, he asked me, he said, well, if you won't play in this band with Duane, I'm building a studio in Macon. Would you be interested in moving there and playing piano in a house band? And I said, sounds good, but where's Macon? And I had no idea where Macon. I said, what state is it in? And I know. He says, Macon, Georgia, and he was telling me it's just south of Atlanta. And that little Richard's from Macon, and Otis is from Macon. But you know, the thing about it then was they had to go somewhere else to get known.
Yeah.
There was nothing going on in Macon.
Right.
No reason that at that time, why I should have ever heard of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, Phil could sell a double bed to the Pope. And he, over the next few weeks, he would call every day, or 2 or 3 days a week, and make the deal a little better and promising. And fame was just around the corner. And so he convinced Johnny Sandlin and Pete Carr. He convinced them before he convinced me.
Oh, okay.
But then Johnny kept calling me and soliciting, and they talked me. And since they were coming, I'd say, well, I'll do it. I'll make one last move.
Yeah.
So in a couple of months, I pulled my band trailer with my meager belongings, and my wife at the time and I, 4th of July found us in Macon, as Maconites, and that was 1969. I've been here ever since. And one side note, I mentioned Chuck Leavell, and we were here a few months, and boy, things started looking up, and I called Chuck, and by this time he's in the 12th grade in high school. And I said, Chuck, you might want to consider moving over here. Things, you can get in on the ground floor. I think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, I had this feeling.
Now, he would have been in competition with you on the keys, though, wouldn't he?
Well, maybe, but I was still playing a lot of guitar at that time.
Okay.
So once I got established in the studio, I just let the guitar playing go to Pete Carr. I mean, he did a better job than I did.
Yeah.
So I honed in on piano playing. And finally, after I produced a band called Marshall Tucker Band, it was a giant hit, the first record, and I was suddenly known as a Capricorn record producer.
All right, but the group Macon that did the single that we
That was our rhythm section.
You guys were the rhythm section, but that kind of fell apart. So did you want to produce? How did you?
Actually, I didn't know I never gave a thought to being a record producer.
Okay.
Now, Johnny Sandlin, on the other hand, he'd always wanted to be a record producer.
Okay.
And so it just sort of by accident fell in my lap.
Yeah.
Johnny produced some demos on Marshall Tucker, and nothing came of that. And so Phil handed me the project. He said, Hornsby, you take them in there and see what you can do.
Yeah.
I always loved a good challenge.
Yeah.
And so I took them in there and spent 2 months, day and night, and came out with an album entitled the Marshall Tucker Band. We had Can't You See and Take the Highway and a few other memorable tunes.
Absolutely. All right. I'm going to reach into the magic Razzie Bailey bag. Did you ever work with Razzie?
Never did, no.
Okay. I actually played drums with him a couple times at Nashville South.
Oh, you got an oldie there.
Yeah, and I'm guessing this was pre-Marshall. Was this the first thing you produced?
First thing I ever produced.
Yeah.
And it's a very forgettable album. But
I was going to ask you, when is the last time you listened to this?
Probably 50 years ago.
Okay.
Anyway, there's some great players on. In fact, Chuck Leavell's on there.
Chuck is on here, yeah.
I have to look on there, see who all was in it. I can't even remember.
Well, Asa is singing, I think.
Yeah, Asa Howard, yeah. He
Ro-
was in a local band in Macon called the Boogie Children.
right, and but before I even heard of the Allman Brothers, I had heard of the Boogie Children. So.
But they were a local band, and the band itself, they were a much better band than I was a producer.
Oh, okay.
It was my first effort, and
Yeah.
I think it was pretty much there for all of those guys, too. First time in the studio for all of them, too.
Yeah. Well, Lou Mullenix, who you knew from Alabama, is that right?
Yes.
And Court Pickett.
He was from Tuscaloosa.
Bobby Cornelius.
That's somebody Asa knew.
Ronnie Chambly.
I think it was from somewhere in Georgia.
All right. So you haven't listened to this in 50 years?
No.
Okay. All right. But I'm guessing you learned a lot in this process of working on that album?
I learned more about what not to do.
Okay. Well, that's important. And
I don't even count that one. I doubt those guys even count that as their first endeavor in the studio.
Okay. Now you mentioned the first Mark Stucker album. This is the second Mark
Second
Stucker.
one, yeah.
And I consider the first two Marshall Tucker bands Gregg Allman's Laid Back album that you worked on.
I played a little bit on Gregg's album.
Yeah, and Brothers and Sisters, which
I didn't have anything to do with it.
Those are four of the five best albums that I think were recorded at Capricorn Studio.
You got to put a Charlie Daniels record or two
Well,
in there.
we'll talk about Charlie in a second. But this just goes to show that you worked on maybe four of the five best albums
Well, thank you.
recorded at Capricorn Studios. And I don't know if I didn't. I was going to bring the Kitty Wells album with me too.
Oh, okay.
You produced a Kitty Wells album. I know that Capricorn was it looked like they were trying to break into the country music market.
Capricorn had growing pains about that time, and that was late. That was the late 1974, early 1975, and to be a real well-rounded record company, they were thinking, why don't we open a country division?
Okay.
And so they asked Johnny Sandlin why they did that. I don't know. Asked him to produce her. At that time, Johnny hated country music. He always had. And he let it be known he did not like country music. I grew up on country music. So Johnny says, "Bo, you want to co-produce this?" And I thought, hell yeah. And so, I'd never really been a Kitty Wells fan that much because that's what we call stone country.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And some of the real stone country stuff was a little too common for me.
Yeah.
But I grew up with that stuff, and I think I took the project for my parents more than for me.
Oh,
My mother and daddy loved that kind of music, and they didn't like the other stuff I was doing that much.
yeah.
Rock and roll and stuff. But I thought I'll do that, and they'll get a kick out of me working with Kitty Wells. So Johnny and I, we started together with this thing, and I think it got more country than he had bargained for, and he just did not enjoy working with the record, with her, and her husband was Johnny Wright,
Johnny Wright,
who
also
had been in
country
a
singer.
duo, Johnny and Jack. They would have been opera star, Grand Ole Opry stars years prior, and he wasn't particularly happy to have her there.
Because you're a bunch of hippies.
Yeah, and other kinds of music he didn't like, and so he fought us tooth and nail on every musical decision we did, and Johnny just couldn't take it. And I was still. It was a challenge to me. So halfway through the record, Johnny pulled out and left me with it. And I thought, hell, I'll finish it. I'll produce it. And so we got through it.
And y'all used a bunch of course, Capricorn musicians. Dickie played on it.
Everybody in the Capricorn stable lined up. They all wanted to play on her record.
And they wrote some of the songs that are on the album.
She
also?
did a Toy Caldwell song.
Yeah.
And one of the best performances she did on the record was Otis Redding song. Been
right.
Loving You Too Long.
Yeah.
She did a great job on that.
That's right.